Hey, welcome to Hanging Out with Digital D. Here we are. Today, our mission is to conquer the Salesforce Certified Hyperautomation Specialist certification. That's our goal. And I'm going to lead into this, sharing my experience, some others' experiences that have gone through this certification. It's not an easy one, I'll tell you that. And there's primarily because you have 5 different products. You know, you go from MuleSoft to RPA, which is MuleSoft RPA, MuleSoft Composer, Salesforce Flow, Salesforce Orchestration, and Einstein Chatbot for this certification at this time. Now, there is a new product out that is IDP, which is Intelligent Document Processing. As of today, which is July 31st, it is not included in the exam at this time. It may be. There's potential that that would change. I'm going to bring you in to the practice exam. We're going to go through the practice exam. I'm going to share some of my pointers, my advice for this as you proceed through the exam. What I am not going to cover is scheduling the exam, getting your system ready for the exam, and actually preparing your office for the exam, all of those things. I'm not going to include that in this video. I might cut another video on that, but primarily this is for those of you that are deep into studying and you need to find out where your strengths and weaknesses are. So here we go. Let me share my screen. And the first place you want to go to, it's within Trailhead Academy. Let me come off of video also. 1 second here. There we go. Okay, so it's in Trailhead Academy. You'll have to log into Trailhead Academy and go from there. It will be the Salesforce Certified Hyperautomation Specialist Exam Guide. Okay, that's what you want to be looking for. And within this exam guide, there are a couple of important factors that I want to bring out to you. So let's scroll down here. And it'll cover, of course, some details about what this certification encompasses and candidacy, what you're not expected to know, what you are, type of thing. But as we proceed down, we'll talk about the exam. It's 6 multiple choice, or 60, yeah, 60 multiple choice questions. Up to 5 of them are non-scored questions. So you might actually get some questions in there that are not even scored. So if you get a question that's really off the wall or something we didn't cover or talk about in the objectives of this exam, that's probably one of those. You have 90 minutes for 60 questions. That is less than 2 minutes per question, less than. Your passing score is 70%. That comes down to 42 correct answers. Okay, and you can see if you need to purchase it, details about where it is there. There's also a hyperlink here that takes you over to actually some information on scheduling the exam. Okay. And as we come down, there's some recommended training resources. Now there's a trail mix here. I highly recommend that you go through that trail mix and you study the material. There's a lot of great visuals. There's quite a bit of review material there. And at the same time, you're earning Trailhead points, so why wouldn't you? Okay. There's also an instructor-led class, and I teach that class. You might have been in one of my classes or some of the classes that are being taught by some of the other certified instructors. So either way, that's also a great way to prepare you. We have here the practice exam. We're going to come back to that. Okay, and we're going to go over some of those questions for strategy and answering those questions, as well as studying some of the concepts. But as we come down to the exam outline, I want to point out to you here in the exam outline that this is one of the objectives. And you can see that there is a percentage associated with it. That does tell us the percentage of questions that are going to fall under this objective. So I encourage you, obviously, it's a 20% for the employ best practices when building hyperautomation solutions, and the details that are listed in here that are going to fall under that percentage of the exam. Composer is going to fall under about 12%. All right. Design, build, and manage your processes, 17%. Salesforce Flow, 13%. Anypoint Platform. Now, Anypoint Platform is represented a couple times in here. That is 15%. Anypoint Platform for monitoring is 70%. Exchange is 8%. Okay, so right there, that's quite a bit. Okay, so we've got 15, 7, and 8. So that's 30% of the exam that's relevant to MuleSoft in some capacity. So 30%. Okay, and then we have Flow Orchestrator, 8%. And somewhere in the flow stuff is also Einstein. I have Einstein chatbots. Here it is. Einstein chatbot. It is represented under Salesforce Flow. I have had some people state that it's not on the exam. It is represented, and I do recall questions about it. Maybe one. So, but at any rate, this is the percentages of what you can expect for the amount of questions on the exam. Now, there is a data bank of questions. If you take it multiple times, you're going to find that the questions are different. I did not pass it the first time that I took it. I actually, according to my calculations, missed it by 0.05. Yeah, I was not happy. But then on the other hand, I don't want to just barely pass it. I wanted to like really pass it. So I tell you that to say that the second time I took the exam, the questions were different. And you never know what you're going to get. So there were a few that were the same, some were different. All right. So some of this is relevant to your code of conduct, and so you can read through this and be familiar with it. I'm not going to go over details in regards to that, but I am going to come back up here to the top. And again, I wanted to, like I said, point out to you these objectives. These key objectives are listed in our exam outline. So when we come up here to the practice exam, okay, when I click this, I come here. All right, and what this is where all of the certification practice exams are. All of the MuleSoft certification practice exams. This is how it's structured now as of today. And I don't know if they're going to be continuing to be modifying and fine-tuning this, but at any rate, this is where you'll find every practice exam. For example, the MuleSoft Associate. The next one down is the Hyperautomation. This is the one we want. But if you scroll further down, you're going to see Developer 1, Developer 2, etc. Okay, so we're going to come back up to the Hyperautomation Specialist. And if you link on this, this is going to take us back to that exam guide. Okay, so we don't need to do that. But that's where another way of finding it. But this PDF, this is the PDF that I'm after. And when you click that, it's going to take you to the PDF that we're going to be working off of for the exam. Now, this one says the duration of the exam is 120 minutes. There is some conflicting information here. This one says it's 90 minutes. So I would want to verify that. Where is it? The exam details. We're here. Yeah, this says 90 minutes. And yet this is saying 120 minutes. I will verify that. I would need to verify that. But at any rate, this is our table of contents. And you can see in each section of the practice exam here, each section of the practice exam coincides with the objective listed here. Okay, the exam outline, that's one of the categories of the objectives. And here it is the table of contents. So we're going to go through this and look at each question. I'm going to give you my strategy in regards to how you might want to answer that question. You know, what it's going to look like. And I will bring you through some of the details in regards to that of recommendations, suggestions, that type of thing. Okay, so we'll go through this process and identify the correct answer, why it's the correct answer, talk about it a little bit. If there is a question or some kind of comment that you would have, just reach out to me. LinkedIn is probably the best way of reaching out to me, and I will be happy to go over any details with you. Okay. So section 1 is employ best practices when using hyperautomation. Now, my recommendation is to, when you first look at a question, come to the comment or question right above all the answers. That's going to give you a pointer of what you really are looking forward to here. Sometimes in the paragraph above, there are things there that are a little wordy, like it may not really be a clue or a hint in what the actual question is asking. Okay, so according to best practices, which tool should be used? Okay, so that's pretty easy. Let's go dissect the rest of the question. I'm going to abbreviate this. It's actually NTO. Okay, NTO wants to begin their hyperautomation journey. The ops team is currently overloaded with integration tasks. Okay, so they're not available. To reduce some of the load, management decides to automate a process connecting Jira and Salesforce. Okay, so this indicator of the ops team not being available or overloaded is going to put us in a category that it's not going to be something that is a pro code or something very detailed that IT needs to support with them. It's going to be a low code solution, more than likely. And we need to take into consideration Jira and Salesforce connectors. Okay, so what would allow Jira and Salesforce connectors? Well, Anypoint Platform would, and MuleSoft app in the flows, we've got connectors for both of those. But Ops is not available. We're looking at a low code type of solution here. And so when we look at the solutions here, process of elimination, it's not a flow orchestration. It's not a Salesforce flow, and it's not RPA. So Composer is the correct answer here on this one. All right. Next. Any airlines wants to create an integration that updates data from Salesforce to a SQL database. SQL database. Okay, Salesforce to that SQL database. The database doesn't have any APIs and must be accessed directly. Again, which tools should we use to meet this requirement? Okay, does flow orchestration or Salesforce flow allow us to integrate with a database, or for that matter, Composer? And the answer is no. Anypoint Studio in a Mule flow would allow us to connect to a database, and that would be our solution as far as Anypoint Studio is concerned. So a lot of these things, if you're very familiar with Mule, they're going to be very simple for you to understand, but in some case too, if you're not and you have questions, ping me. All right, number 3, any airlines has a well, let me go back to my recommendation. Come here, okay? All right, to meet these requirements, which 2 steps should the hyperautomation practitioner use to build a solution? Okay, this is when these little comments really matter, to pay attention. What 2 steps without the help of IT? And also choose 2. If it says choose 2 and you choose 1 and it's right, you don't get a half of a point there. You don't get it half right. It's either right or it's wrong. Okay, in order to get that answer correct, you would have to have both answers correct. There's not a halfway there. Okay. So now let's go back up and read the paragraph. They have a legacy system. It needs to create and update customer PIN numbers. System will not be replaced. They don't have access to any Salesforce developers. The company asks them to build a flow that has the following requirements. Number one, create or update a PIN in Salesforce. Number two, create APIs using any point platform that allow future enhancements and connectivity to that legacy system. So Mule would need to be used for the legacy system. And then we also want to have this, the other half of the solution, create or update a PIN in Salesforce. So we need to read through these and see which ones and do process of elimination are going to be a solution. Okay, create a bot that is exposed as an API to create and update PINs in that legacy system. That sounds intriguing. Create a MuleSoft connector. Create a MuleSoft composer record triggered flow that calls any point APIs that can in turn call the system API exposed by MuleSoft RPA. Okay, so there's some things happening here very nicely that would allow it to update in Salesforce. All right, what about using an Einstein bot API to link the legacy system with Salesforce and Anypoint platform? Einstein bot does not do that. Okay, create a Salesforce orchestration that calls Anypoint APIs using interactive background steps. There's really not any interactive necessary on this. And really orchestration is not a good fit for what they're claiming it needs to do here. So realistically, A and B are the solutions recommended here, which would achieve the goal that we're looking for. Okay. All right, next one. Again, we've got another hint here. Which tool should be used to build this solution without the help of IT? Without the help of IT, now we're already talking about low code solutions. We're talking about things that are not necessarily going to require a pro code type of solution. All right, so a business user at NTO needs to accelerate their field employee onboarding process. They want to automate ticket creation for laptop provision in ServiceNow when a user is provisioned in Salesforce. Okay, so something happens in Salesforce, and what they want is an automated ticket created in ServiceNow for them to get a laptop. So if we look at our tools, if we're talking about without the help of IT to build this solution, this orchestration could be used in that case. But to build the solution without the help of IT, we are looking really at the least effort for a low code, and that's going to be Composer. Okay. So flow orchestration kind of could have been applied. Anypoint platform, yeah, you could do all this in MuleSoft. You know, you could do a MuleSoft flow, but that would you'd have to have IT. You'd have to have your Mule developers involved. RPA, it's not a good fit for RPA at all. RPA is for those systems that, you know, you cannot interact with easily. So RPA is kind of out. So Composer. All right, number 5. The Anyline Airlines IT team. Okay, right there's, well, I should go back to this. Which hyperautomation tool should be used? Okay, so now IT team is involved. That's going to already point us in the direction that it's going to be a pro code environment, a lot of configurations. Let's read on. All right, so we need to orchestrate and integrate the opportunity and move it over to an order process. Okay. This process involves creating and updating the opportunity records in Sales Cloud, right? Creating orders and generating invoices in NetSuite, and then updating payment data from Stripe. All right, so we have 1, 2, 3 different systems with many things that have to happen there. Okay, Sales Cloud, NetSuite, Stripe. Now, if Composer were listed here, I would say you could probably do all of that with Composer, but it's not. And really, Salesforce Flow, not really. Orchestration, no. RPA is not needed for this. That's not a job for RPA. Remember, RPA are those legacy systems or a system that does not have an API. Mule, Anypoint Platform, Mule is especially with IT support, you have your IT team involved. And that's a Mule app. A Mule app easily can do that. And so that's why I say sometimes you'll hear me in coaching sessions or in training saying that you can have a solution that MuleSoft is providing for us. We can write a Mule app that does that. But if you're talking about a low-code solution, you've got to go to another product like Composer that can do something like this. But if there's a lot of details and things that are happening in regards to that or big data, it's going to be Anypoint Platform. Okay. All right, next question. What are the 3 benefits? Oh, pray you don't have choose 3. I helped write some of the exams and I did not do the choose 3. I did not, honestly, it's a challenge, you know, for anyone. Your odds have just decreased when you have a choose 3. Because remember, if one of the 3 is wrong, you get the whole thing wrong. So it's not like you get partial credit. Okay, so shame on them for having to choose 3. I'm not happy about that. But what are the 3 benefits that they should realize? Who are they? Any airline is implementing a hyperautomation solution throughout their company. Okay, so in general, this is a generalized question in regards to hyperautomation solution. What are the 3 benefits that they should see? Start reading through your options, process of elimination. Starting at the bottom, reduces process efficiency. Well, we don't want it to reduce the process efficiency. That means it's worse. That's not good. It should increase the efficiency. Eliminates the need for APIs. Well, you know, we are API led. We're an API led company. We are all about API led architectural style, and so eliminates the need for APIs. No, we still will use APIs as needed. Improves the customer experience. Now you're talking. Reduces operating costs. Yes. Adds consistency, accuracy, and speed in process. Okay, so it's going to be A, B, and C. So there you have it. And again, watch those multiple answer questions. NTO. All right, let's see. According to best practices. All right, so let's take a look here. According to testing best practices. All right, what 2 ways should they test their solution? Okay, so they've developed a hyperautomation solution. It's ready to test. The solution includes Salesforce, Anypoint Platform, Cloud Hub, well, Anypoint Platform, Cloud Hub, Composer, and RPA. All right, so let's check and see what these answers are saying to us. All right, deploy the MuleSoft RPA into a sandbox for testing. All right, well, that bot, if you remember, we installed it on a virtual machine. So that's where it is for us to test. It is not in a sandbox. So no, that doesn't apply. All right, MuleSoft Composer, sandbox mode. Well, no, we tested our Composer flows, but they are not in a sandbox mode. That doesn't happen. Deploy the Mule application to Cloud Hub sandbox environment. Yes. You can have a sandbox environment for Mule and use Salesforce sandboxes to mimic CRM data and test Salesforce configuration and code. Yes, yes. So A and B, once again, are the correct answers here. Okay, again, process of elimination. Number 8, let's go down here. According to best practices, what is the recommended integration solution for implementing the automation of records between both orgs? Okay, so NTO purchased another company. They need to sync their records. They need to sync new or updated Salesforce records into the new company's org. Okay, into the new company's org. Now, what we don't know is that a Salesforce org? What is it? What is it? But we need to go from Salesforce to the new company's org. Would a database do that? No. A SOAP API? No. There's nothing here that tells us it is a SOAP web service. File Exchange? Not. REST API? Yes. Okay, so the answer in this case is going to be A, REST API. All right, number 9. Come down here. Which configuration step meets this requirement on the new company's APIs? Okay, so which step is going to meet the requirement? New APIs up here. Okay, so in this case, NTO purchased a new company. They want to restrict the calls to their APIs and only allow them to come from a certain IP range. Okay, so when we're talking about this type of requirement, this is a non-functional requirement. And so what this means is that we need to provide some way in which we are managing the access to this API to only allow this particular IP range. Okay, so that's what it's saying. That's what we need to do. So if we come down here and we start looking at our options, okay? So we have configure the IP allow, IP range, static IPs, IP allow. And so this you will have to know from any point platform when it comes to the policies. And I do recommend that you study the policies in API Manager. What are the policies that are available? Well, there is an IP allow list policy. And when we are managing an API, we are using API Manager to add those policies to that API. And so, but you would have to do process of elimination here based on your knowledge of that policy. So there is an IP allow list policy. So that is a policy. So that is, these two are the only two that potentially could be the right answer. All right. And when we put a policy on an API like that, we do not put it in Exchange. We actually levy that policy in API Manager on the proxy, or if it's a basic endpoint, it would be embedded. But either way, it's a policy added in API Manager on the proxy for the IP allow list. And it is a range that you can set. That's the name of the policy. All right. So study those policies. Make sure you're solid on the policies. All right. Which two independent solutions should be recommended? In other words, you could have either or that would provide us with this solution. Northern Trail Outfitters, NTO, develops an experience API. Now, their goal behind this is for third parties to integrate it with their own application network. So we want reusability here. We want them to be aware that this experience API is available for them to use. So how can we get that out there for people to be aware of that? All right, starting at the bottom, publish an API application template. That's just a template. That's not an application that's already running for them to use. It's part of an experience API. No, that is just a template. All right, publish the API specification to the private exchange. Now, in the lifecycle of the API, we do that first. We publish it to our internal or private exchange, and we, provide it for feedback to our team members that are on any point platform. There are co-associates on the platform to check it out. That's not going to hit third-party affiliates though, because it's private. And then if you remember in the lifecycle of the API, we shared it publicly on our public portal. Now that public portal is what is referred to as the public exchange. This would work. Okay. And then the last answer here is API Community Manager. And if you're not familiar with that, Google it, look it up. It is a way in which it's an additional license feature that you can add, a company can add to their platform account that allows them to customize their version of Exchange. And so it runs over top of Experience Cloud. And what that does allow them to do is to have branding on their community manager, which is really running on the public exchange, their version of the public exchange, but it's very customizable. They can add blogs, they can add promotional things, they can feature certain APIs, have an API catalog, many things that can happen there. There's also Experience Hub as well. Okay, so this is a correct answer. So A and B are your correct answers here to get it out there in the public for those third-party affiliates to find these APIs. All right, number 11. Oh, this is a long one. Number 11. Okay, so let's see what we have on this one. All right, come down here. You know me, I like to jump down here first. Which component will likely require the most effort to complete? Okay, for me, I would toss this question out immediately, because when you start saying, when I was helping with writing exam questions, you cannot have an objective answer here, right? This is an objective question. You know, what is the most effort to complete? All right, so that to me, actually not an objective answer. That's a subjective answer. It's subject to be an opinion. Okay, so first of all, this is a bad question, in my opinion, because you're asking for an opinion. What do you think would be the most effort to complete? Either way, if this shows up on your exam, follow along with the focus that's here. Okay, so what they want to do, here's your to-do list. Okay, they want to complete the following components: a large flow orchestration interacting with many different teams that processes the credit card application in Salesforce, a bot that will initiate the credit card application and create a record of an existing custom object. So they're going to use this custom object. Okay, but this is what triggers it. Okay, this is what triggers it right here. Then we'll use RPA for an application and enter the values into the field. And then MuleSoft Composer Flow that will trigger if the credit card application is approved and invoke the RPA process. Okay, so again, Einstein Bot's going to start it with a customer coming onto a website saying, I want to initiate a credit card application. And then they, you know, it proceeds to create a Salesforce custom object. All right, so you see what's needing to happen here. This is what's needing to happen. Any airline implements a credit card program requiring their customers to go through a review process before approving. They want to develop a series of hyperautomation solutions that will integrate to process the applications and enter the customer's information into a legacy system, which is why we're using RPA here once it's approved. All right, so now let's scroll down here and see what our answers are. Which component, one of them, will likely require the most effort to complete? Okay, of these components, which one is going to require the most effort to complete? All right, so as we're looking at this, we want to see, okay, a simple MuleSoft Composer Flow that triggers if the credit card application is approved and invokes the RPA. Simple here, to me, is an indication. Okay, so that is likely not the answer that they're after. An RPA process that opens a desktop app and then enters the values into the field, that's going to be pretty streamline running through on that. An Einstein bot that initiates the credit card application, that's a chat bot. So that's going to be pretty easy there as far as the effort to complete. A large flow orchestration. Okay, indicator right there. Large flow orchestration, interacting with many different teams. Okay, so you're waiting on different teams to do their process to approve different things. That processes the credit card application in Salesforce. So the correct answer is actually A. It's not which one is going to be the hardest to create or to build. It's which one is going to be the most effort to complete in this hyperautomation flow. So again, this one that's interacting with many different teams, it could get bottlenecked on an approval. Some of those are going to be interactive steps in that flow orchestration. So that is going to be what potentially could be the most effort to complete. But again, like I said, I'd rather have it more black and white than most effort to complete. So that's just my thought. All right, there you go. Number 12. Yeah, we're on to section 2 after this. Okay, number 12. NTO. Well, no, let me go back here. Which access information must be provided to create and configure an RPA connection in a composer flow? Now we do this, right? We do this in the hyperautomation class, in the private coaching that I've done. We do this. Okay, so we create a bot and then we use it in composer flow. All right, so let's see. At Northern Trail, at NTO, an RPA process was built and deployed to automate the process of extracting leads from NTO's marketing events. Now, a hyperautomation specialist needs to create a MuleSoft composer flow to call that RPA process and automatically get that data. Okay, so if we look at this, we can see there is to provide the information and configure our RPA connection in a MuleSoft composer flow, we can go through the process here in the composer configuration. Okay, composer configuration. So we would need to get some of this data and information. Now, it does depend on how you configure your bot in that connection. Okay, so in the case of the RPA connection, it would not be a client ID or client secret primarily. Okay, now we in our case used a connected app that did show a client ID and client secret, but they're looking for the RPA details. Okay, the RPA details. So client ID and client secret is not a correct answer in this case, although my knee-jerk reaction would have been that. But hear me out. There's sometimes what they call a distractor answer. This is a distractor answer because it's partially true, but not 100% true. Okay. Token ID and token secret? No, we don't use that at all. B, RPA instance URL and RPA instance key. RPA bots don't have instances in this case. No, they're going to be, it's going to be the RPA API URL and the user API key. But we actually configured ours in our course using the OAuth, and OAuth did require the API URL. It also required the client ID and client secret. So it's a little tricky on this. Don't let that catch you. Go to the most important information first, which would be that URL. Okay, and user API key. So that part is important here, is the API URL. Although we did add client ID and client secret, if it said choose two, I would do A and D. But the correct answer in this case, according to them, is going to be A. Okay. That brings us up to section 2. I'm going to stop the video here. So I'm going to break them out into different sections so that you can target the section that you need. So this was all about section 1. So thanks for joining me today, and you stay tuned for the additional sections coming up. Have a great day.